From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and affectionately known by many as Maggie's. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release. In our From the Vault episodes, we share past podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series: Recover Ed, Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcast aims to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We are glad you're here, and thank you for listening.
Good morning, everyone. So today is a very special day. For those of you who don't know, which I think most of you do, once or twice a week, in substitution of our regularly formatted check-ins, we do workshops. And so for the next however many months or weeks, every other week, Lisa is going to be on taking us through the later steps. And so one of my favorite things about Next Step is in Social Detox, you all get a lot of 1, 2, and 3. And the Maggie's meetings that you go to throughout the week are a lot of 1, 2, and 3. And what we get to do in Next Step is study the later parts of the book, the later parts of the steps on a deeper level. And this is something that you all can continue to do for your lifetime, because graduates are allowed to come back as well. And we have 2 graduates on the call right now. And so that's so exciting. So anyways, rambling. Today we have Lisa, who's going to start with step 4 and the resentment. And one of the things that makes me so grateful to work at Maggie's is the strong recovered women that because even our non-alcoholics are strong women, but just the strong women that work for the organization. And one of my favorite things about Lisa, and I say this to anybody who asks me about Maggie's and everything else, one of the things I admire most about her is how she puts her recovery first. She is a recovered alcoholic before she is an executive director. And I just think that is so important, and it definitely trickles down to the rest of the organization. And so if y'all have questions for her, I'm sure she's be happy to answer them. And I'm just going to stop talking and turn it over.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right. So hi, you guys. My name is Lisa, and I am a recovered alcoholic. And my sobriety date is June 2nd of 2007. And so for that, I'm really, really grateful. I love the fact that Stephanie talks about how the women at Maggie's are strong in their recovery. I think that's one of the biggest points of difference, at least from my experience of being at several rehabs. I don't know about you guys, but it was like I was a rehab junkie or something. I never really saw that. I saw a bunch of people trying to fix me, and I didn't have a lot of experience of people telling me what they did and that leaving the fixing up to me and God. It was always presented to me as a self-help program. If you do this, then you'll be successful. If you do that, then you won't be. And I didn't, I'm very strong and have a lot of self-will. If you've known me for 5 minutes, you can see that. So it was so attractive when someone presented the program to me and they said, you can do whatever you want. This is America. It's up to you and to God. I'm going to show you what I did to build my own personal relationship with the God of my understanding, and the rest is up to you. And I love that. Maybe it's my entrepreneurial spirit, or maybe it's just me being a stubborn ass, but that was more attractive to me than any therapist or psychiatrist telling me what I needed to do. They made it really clear, I'm not going to tell you what to do. And my sponsor today still tells me that. I'll say, what should I do? And she's like, that's between you and God. And nothing irritates me more, because I'm like, I called you for a reason. So I really love the program that it's like a self-help, self-start, getting closer to God. And that is just a beautiful thing. So the purpose of today is to begin the process of explaining what 4 through 12 are and why it's so important, or there's several layers to that, but why it's really important to go in order, and what particularly leads us to fill the gap between step 3 and to get to step 4. So in step 3, we made a decision that we were going to do the rest of the work. I mean, in essence, that's what the 3rd step decision is. If you've been in any of the talks at Maggie's, we go over that ad nauseum, that The purpose of the third step is not to make a decision not to drink. It's to make a decision to learn how to live on a spiritual basis. So if you open up the book, your big book, because I will be going to the big book a lot. So if you don't have it with you, you need to go get it, because I literally will not talk about recovery without a book. So if you open it up to the top, actually, let's go to the bottom of page 63. It says, next we launched on a course of vigorous action. So the course of vigorous action that they're talking about here is all 12 steps. So the course of vigorous action is steps 4 through 12, actually. They're not talking about step 4 in that part of the sentence. They're talking about step 4 in the next part of the sentence when it says, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face, which is me, and to be rid of, which is God, the things in ourselves which have been blocking us. Our liquor was a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. All right, so in regards to that paragraph, what they're talking about here in the first 100, so remember, this is written by the first 100. It was actually 99 guys and 1 woman, and she was a badass, by the way, but that's a whole nother talk. They're talking about the purpose of why we're going forward with this work. It is literally to look at the causes and conditions which have been blocking us from a spiritual awakening. Is the goal of spiritual awakening? Absolutely. Is the goal to get sober? No. The result of a spiritual awakening is to get sober. So I'm starting to look at this work in a whole different light. I'm not trying to stay sober. I'm trying to get a spiritual awakening. And so when it said here that liquor was a symptom, I don't know about you guys, but when I first walked into AA, liquor was my problem. Vodka was my problem. If I could just stop drinking, I would be okay. This whole inventory thing sounded really silly and ridiculous. Like, you want me to sit down in front of a chick I just met 2 weeks ago and tell her my life story? That's like cult stuff. It's weird. The only thing that got me teachable, you guys, the only thing that got me reasonable and willing to do this inventory was alcohol. Alcohol was my symptom, but alcohol was also my motivation. The circumstances do not make me an alcoholic, but my circumstances got me willing. And so I was open-minded to try this, not even thinking it would work. So this is really laying out the entire process of getting to 10, 11, and 12. So if step 10, and this is where I'm going to land into step 4, if step 10 is 4 through 9 all rolled into one, I literally have to be taken through each step to learn how to live in 10, 11, and 12 every day. I have to learn how to live in 10. What does 10 look like? The first step of which is a personal house cleaning. The first step of step 10 is a personal house cleaning every day. So I'm going to learn how to do it. Now I'm going to get into the habit, into the practice of doing step 10. I can do it in 30 seconds, but I've got to learn how to get to the process in which I can live in 10. This is the first step in which I'm going to do that. The way the first 100 laid it out was they laid it out in an inventory for step 4. So if you look at page 59, the actual step says, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. All right. So let's keep reading in the book and let's see what it says. The other thing I wanted to say, which I love this, and I heard this one time, which I think is awesome. If my liquor is a symptom of a spiritual malady, then recovery is going to be a symptom of a spiritual awakening, right? Sobriety is going to be that symptom. So that's ultimately what I'm getting to. All right. So therefore, we started on a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact finding, which is the searching part, and a fact facing, which is the fearless part, right? Process. In an effort to discover the truth in stock and trade, one object is to disclose damaged or unsellable goods to get rid of them promptly and without regret. Okay. Do you see how those two little points of criteria. They just laid out some criteria for us for the step 4. Promptly, that means we're going to do this quick. We're vigorous. We're going to move it. It's not going to take us a month. We're not going to do the step a month. Promptly. They keep pushing those really big action words at us. And then the other thing is without regret. So what they're saying is without feelings. So they've made very specific points here. It's a business inventory. So if we're taking inventory at Maggie's and I'm looking at the shelves and I see we don't have any paper towels, am I going to get crushed and cry and be so sad or mad that we don't have paper towels? Or am I just going to say, you know what, we need paper towels and put it on the list? That's why they're talking about a business inventory here. They're setting me up for an unemotional response in step 10. They're showing me that this is a business inventory. It's not a feelings program. It's an action program. And they're starting, because this is the successful journey here of their recovery, they're starting to introduce the concept of unemotional unattachment to all these feelings. So I don't react, I respond. And there's a big difference in that. So if you look at the bottom of the page, they're going to start setting up the inventories. So resentment is our number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. So this is the first time that they've mentioned spiritual. Anything spiritual, spiritual disease, anything like that, it's right here. They're starting to talk about the spiritual malady. For we've not only been mentally and physically ill, right? We've been spiritually sick. So when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. You're going to see a lot of mention of mental and physical, of mind and body, of obsession and allergy, but they're always usually together. Control and choice, mind and body, mental and physical. He usually always pairs those together. So just that's like a fun, thing, well, whatever, fact that you can look at when you're looking through the book. It's really cool how they do that. So that's why I say, and Chloe and I have ongoing discussions about this. It's so fun because it's not a deal breaker for any one of us, but we have, in my teaching, and what helped me was that I didn't look at the spiritual part of my disease until step 4, because it literally talks about it right here. So if I'm looking at alcoholism in 1, 2, and 3, finding out why I'm an alcoholic in the disease model, here I'm starting to address the spiritual issue that I have. It's not alcohol is only a symptom of this malady. So the purpose of these inventories, and we're going to talk about it, is to get to these things in ourselves up here, which have been blocking us. This is an effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which have been blocking us from what? Blocking us from drinking too much? Blocking us from having a spiritual awakening so that I can fit myself to be of maximum service to God and the people about me. It's always about someone else. This inventory that I'm doing or that you guys are doing is only so that I can fit myself to be of maximum. It's not so I can be happy. It's not so I can be free. All of those things are beautiful, believe me. But that is a result of seeing the things that are blocking me, finding them objectionable, asking God to remove them in step 7, and then going out to the world in 8 and 9. So it's literally in order for a reason. So I have to tell you all this just to kind of get this out there, because I seem so like, this is all. I thought I could not wait to write all this stuff down because I was the victim. My husband had cheated on me. I had 4 kids. You would be drinking too. My mom, my childhood, don't even get me started. And I still have my first 4 step. And I look at it sometimes. So keep it, you guys, because it'll be really interesting to come back. I wish I had the problems today that I thought I had 13 years ago. Hello. So keep the inventory. It's really fun to kind of go back and look at. Anyway, so the inventory is literally set up. The details are only there so that I can identify my defects. So the details don't matter. Like, let me get into the mechanics of it, and then we'll talk about column 1 and column 2. So it talks about specifically 3 different inventories. Resentment, which is our past. So resentment are things that have happened in the past that I'm irritated over, I'm rethinking, replaying, and refeeling. It's not about someone who cut in front of me on Central Expressway. It's not my sister who irritated me because she didn't do what I wanted her to do and she didn't call mom or whatever. It's literally something that I'm replaying, refeeling, I can't get, I'm obsessed with this. Like, it's a driving force in my head, and it was my trump card is why I drank. So that's a resentment. It's different than angry. It's different than something that goes away. It's literally something I wake up with, I go to sleep with, and I cannot get rid of it, right? Fear is our future. So fear is something, and we'll get into fear maybe next week, but I really believe fear is the number one thing. I think fear drives resentments. I think fear is an evil and corroding thread to every decision I make, because I make decisions based on God help or self-help. And I don't think God's plan's good enough. So I'm going to resort to self-help, to self-reliance. And I don't know, I didn't identify that I was doing that until I started doing the inventory and living in this. And my sponsor points it out. So fear is future stuff. Fear is me making decisions based on something I'm afraid I'm going to lose or I'm not going to get. My plan's better. I need to interject in my son's recovery because he's not doing it right. I mean, there's a myriad of things that are fear-based. And then the sex inventory, which is the third inventory that they outline here. And the sex inventory is about harms, sex, and how we use these powers to influence and harm other people in our lives. Manipulation is pretty much a key word there, and we'll get into that later. But these are 3 inventories. So before I get into this resentments, I've got to figure out how I'm going to set this up. So I know that there's a lot of checklists and forms, and you do whatever your sponsor asks you to do. For a long time, probably 7 or 8 years, I did a form. I had the women I work with fill out this form that Joe McHugh did. That's where that form comes from. But now I just take pen to paper. Now I just have the women take a blank sheet of paper that's marginalized, this outline, it has lines on it, and I have them do 4 columns. The first column, in all 3 inventories, 4 columns. The first column is who or what am I pissed off at? We'll do fear and sex later. Resentments. Who, what, this is the only time that you'll ever hear me say people, places, or things, but what am I pissed off about? Institutions. I was really mad at the police, the Dallas police, because they kept arresting me and they gave me 5 PIs that I did not deserve. I mean, that kind of stuff. I literally listed all of this stuff out. Okay. Second column. What happened? Like, what happened that I am irritated with my sister or my mother or my husband? Bullet pointed. If you look at page 65, Bill Wilson in the first 100 give us a very specific example of only the first 3 columns. The 4th column is on page 67, and we'll get into that. But if you look at the page 65, there's 3 specific columns. And if you look at the first example, Mr. Brown, the cause, what happened, and effects. So that's the 3rd column. But the 2nd column, all those details of what happened is only 19 words. That's it. And the guy did a lot of stuff. I mean, he paid attention to his wife. This guy told his wife about his mistress, and he wants his job. I mean, that's a lot to be pissed off about, but it's only 19 words. The brevity is extremely important, because the longer I write out why, the cause, the more I'm justifying in my head why I was owed that or why I'm pissed off. So I'm literally, the more words I use, the more justification that is in my head about why I'm using that as an excuse. Another important thing that they talk about here on these pages, it's actually at the bottom of page 64, is that the columns are done vertically. They're not done horizontally. We go up and down. Again, this is to set us up as a business inventory. If I start going across, I'm going to get emotional. The business is going to go out the door and I'm going to get pissed off all over again. But it's a really good exercise, and there's brilliant in the execution. If we go up and down, we don't get as emotionally attached to all these details, right? So we go up and down. I'm going to list all the people, and then I'm going to get our people, places, and whatever it is. Then I'm going to list the what happened, the cause. Why am I so pissed off, right? And so the third, and I'm going to do a big Q&A here in about 4 or 5 minutes. So just write your questions down, okay? Because I had a ton of questions. I don't know if you guys will, but, and then the third column. So the interesting thing about the third column is that the secret to a fifth step is that, you'll hear me say this, all fifth steps should look exactly alike. You know why? Is because we're going to focus on a fifth step. I'm going to focus on the third column and the fourth column. I'm not going to listen to all the details, because see, human defects of human beings are all the same. It's pride, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. Literally, you guys, think about it. The details only get us to the defects, and the defects are all the same. So do you see, we're pointing out these defects, and the details give us the platform on which to identify that. That's all. So I'm literally going to focus on the third column and the fourth column more than I'm going to focus on. Now, as a newcomer, the newcomers always want to focus on column 1 and column 2. But I'm going to focus as a sponsor on column 3 and column 4. So column 3, what does this affect? And they talk about it in the 12 and 12, which I don't usually ever quote in a big book session. But I think it's really important in the fourth step, the fifth step, and actually the sixth step too. Because what Bill talks about, Bill Wilson, knows his experience. It's not a teaching book. It's just his experience with going through the steps, was that it affects our instincts. This third column is really important to personal instincts like social, security, and sexual. So the instincts are, the social instinct is, how do you feel about me? How do I interact in a social setting, right? To the exterior. The security instinct is how I feel about myself. I'm telling you guys all this because it helped me to figure out my third column. It gave me a little bit more insight. The security instinct is how I feel about myself, my self-esteem. What am I going to do to be a chameleon, to change who I am to get you to like me? So it's a combination of the social instinct, the security instinct, and then the sexual instinct is, how do I present myself in relationships that I'm intimate in to get you to like me more? There's a whole myriad of things that we'll get into on page 69 and 70. But this third column, if you look on page 65, it talks about those instincts by way of, so what does Mr. Brown affect? It affects my sex relationships, right? My sexual instincts with my wife and this other chick that's my mistress. She's not going to like me anymore after she finds out all this. It affects my self-esteem, because that's my fear. Self-esteem is how I feel about myself. I'm in fear that you won't like me, right? Sex relations, because he told his wife about the mistress. Security. So it affects my security, right? How do I feel about myself? And then it goes on and on. Most of this stuff, as you can see, even the resentments are fear driven. So we're going to talk a lot more about fear when we get to that point. And then the interesting thing about, so let's turn the page and let's look at the top of the page, because I think this is really important. A second sentence. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us have ever gotten. The usual outcome is that people continue to wrong us and we stayed sore. Do you see how they're pointing out that people will wrong you? This is not the purpose. The purpose is not to change your past. It's to change your perspective of the past. The facts of my past, my resentments, did not change. What changed is God changed me in the way that I looked at them. So that was really, these people may continue to wrong you. That's not the point here. I'm not trying to get people to not wrong me. Actually, it's the opposite of that, but that's a whole nother thing in step 9. All right. If you look at the bottom of the page, it says we turn back to the list. So this is when we're going to start looking at our fourth step, which is interesting because why is the resentment prayer here between the third column and the fourth column. And if you look at the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's a lot of reasoning why we pray between the third column and the fourth column. Remember, this is all an iteration of step 10. So they're getting us in the habit of bringing God into even our resentments, right? Okay. So we were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us, not wronged us, dominated us. See that word? In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, like, am I making this stuff up? Am I in delusion? Or is it really happening? I have to ask myself that. Had the power to actually kill. How could we escape? How can we see these resentments must be mastered, but how? We cannot wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, and though they did not like our symptoms and the way these disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. This is commonly known as the resentment prayer. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, look at this. This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. You notice it doesn't say, I'm going to pray for you. No. I'm asking God to change me, not you, so that I can live in this world and you can act any way that you want to, and it doesn't affect me. I'm not controlling you anymore. And my recovery is not based on how you treat me. And there's a whole lots of talk about that in steps 8 and 9. All right. So here we go back to the list as referring to our list again, right? So we're going to the fourth column now, putting out of the minds the wrongs others had done, completely putting out the minds what my husband did. We resolutely looked for our own mistakes, not our part, our mistake. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where are we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. So we listed them. This is where I'm starting to become free. I am going to be free because I am free of you influencing me so much that I'm starting to use that as a trump card to drink. Look, if I'm in control of my reactions and my responses with God's help, because I'm given the tools here, I can live free. This is, if I own my shit, I am free. I got to quit cussing. Okay. I'm free, right? And that was so cool to me. I'm like, what? You mean Dave is he can't, I'm not drinking because of him? I thought this is forever. And that's really great news for us. So again, in the resentment, in the past, 4 columns, all up and down, right? And then I'm going to pray between the third column and the fourth column before I start to see my mistakes. Because see, I want to make sure that I understand that I'm sick too. I'm going to see eye to eye to these people. I'm not better than, I'm not less than. We're all humans. And I'm going to start to give grace because God is giving me that. And then when I do that, I can better start to see my own mistakes because I'm going to realize that the people who perhaps wronged me are human too. And it was beautiful when I started to see that in this resentment inventory. All right, so I'm going to stop there. Like I said, we'll get into the fear and the sex and all that kind of stuff. Literally, I really want to hear feedback and questions from you guys because I've been talking for 30 minutes.
Mandy, do you have a question?
Yeah, I actually did. Hi guys, I'm Mandy, alcoholic. I didn't pray about, like, I do the pray in and pray out with my inventory, Lisa. I kind of feel like I need to go back now for our mistakes. I've already done it, but I mean, I prayed, but is that just me getting fear about that right now, or will God reveal more to me? Does that make sense what I'm trying to ask? Because you've made it, I'm starting to understand this more and more the more I hear it from you guys. Like it's making more sense to me, but if you could answer that for me real quick, what I just asked.
So I
Thank you.
think you're welcome. So it's always like the first thing that you write down is always going to be the right thing. I think. I'm like,
Okay.
don't go back and mess. If you prayed, see, prayer is really important because they're instructing us the first 100, everything we do, thy will be done many times each day. They're instructing us that prayer is really important. So if you prayed before you started this inventory, because I pray before I pee almost, but then you're literally going, that's God. It's going to be revealed what needs to be revealed.
Okay.
But the book tells us to pray before I start, because I'm going to write down all this stuff. I'm in resentment only because of them. I was selfish only because she forced me to. I was the victim. Victim, stay drunk.
Okay.
That's why the prayer's there.
Thank
I don't
you
know if that helps or not, but I wouldn't
No, it does.
second guess.
Thank you.
I have a question. So it talks about thoroughness and honesty. And when I first got sober, I thought thoroughness and honesty meant that I had to tell you what all these people did to me. And I thought that was me being thorough and honest. Can you explain to us what thoroughness and honesty looks like with doing our inventory?
That's a good question. I swear. And also there's another line in there. It says your whole life story. So my first fourth step was 60 pages. I shit you not, 60. I did it from a workbook. And I mean, it was a work of art. It was a novel. It would have been a bestseller. But when I went back to the book and my sponsor, the one who really took me to the book, it said, this is about, if you look, and she took me to page 72 because it talks about it there. This requires action on our part, which completed will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects, not the details. So this life story and the thoroughness is only like, am I being thorough around what happened? Am I being delusional? Is it fancy to real? What happened? Am I being thorough on my resentments? Remember, it's not about who ran you off or that person in third grade. I mean, my sponsor told me to go from today backwards. So thoroughness, absolutely. Who am I rethinking, replaying, refeeling in my head? And then the honesty part. So for me, I could only be as honest as I could see. It was revealed a lot more to me in the fifth step. I could only see when I was doing my fourth step that my husband, I hadn't done anything wrong to my husband, that I was completely wronged. He wronged me. Like he cheated, right? I didn't do anything to deserve that. But my sponsor pointed out some very interesting things in the fifth step about how quite perhaps I could have gotten a little bit of that started since I was drunk for a decade and he didn't have a partner. I mean, it does not mean that was something that he should have done. Absolutely. But I have to look at my mistake. So I think the honesty part is to the extent of what you can see at this point. It's really just important to get it on paper. So honest and thoroughness is really important, but the thoroughness it's not your whole life story. The life story is only there just so that you make sure that your resentments are complete. Big difference in a novel. Does that help?
I think so. Does that help everyone else too?
Yeah.
Anybody else have a question?
I have one. On the third column, I mean the fourth column.
Fourth, okay.
Right. Are you saying that we need what part we played in it and blame what we caused? But do we put selfish, that type of answer in that column as well? Like we were selfish, we were frightened, we were self-seeking. Is that what goes in that column as well?
It does.
Okay.
Based on the book, it says, where were we selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened? I've done several fifth steps over the course of my life. I think that especially when I was getting divorced, I did a couple over my mom. And I could see pride. I could see my ego reigniting itself. So I added a bunch of words to the fourth column. I mean, the book is great and it gives us directions, but it's not limiting. If there's other things that I see, judgment was I'm very judgmental. And I saw that and I didn't like it. But Laura, you can see and if you see stuff that's blocking you, these defects of character that are blocking you from having a spiritual journey, I would put it down. I would put the words down for sure. And I would add to it.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. Can you describe the difference between fancied and delusional?
Well, fancy and delusion are the same thing. Fancied and real. So fancied means just made up. So it's such a good question. And that is so important. I literally can make up a story in my head about how you feel about me by the way that you looked at me. And I can make it about me in 2 seconds without any regard to maybe this person in the grocery store is being rude to me because their dog died this morning. And maybe it's not about me. Maybe I'm making this fancy thing up because I want to feel better about myself. I want to be above you, right? Or I want to be less than, right? I'm just not good enough. I'm making that story up in my head. I'm shaming myself to my drink. I've made the story up, which is fancy, delusional. I'm in delusion without any thought to the real facts. That's what my sponsor does. Lisa, that how do you know that? How many assumptions are you making in that story you just told me? A lot. Fancied is delusion. My obsession to drink will take me to a story that will help make me believe that you don't like me and I need to get you to like me, or F you, I'm going to go drink. Fancied. I literally rely on my sponsor for fancied or real today, probably more than any other thing that I call my sponsor about. Fancied is this made up delusional story I tell myself about you or the world, and it's not based in reality. And that's my obsession talking. Does that help?
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, I have another question. I have all the questions. So my first question would be, can you explain the difference between selfish and self-seeking?
So self-seeking is doing things to get people to like me. Like I'm going to say things or do things. I'm in the middle of a dinner party and there's a big talk of election, like who you're going to vote for. And, and what I'll do is I'll pretend that candidate is the guy I'm going to vote for because I want you to like me. That's such a simplistic way, but that's self-seeking behavior. I want you to like me, so I'll change who I am to the core of my being to get you to like me. I will transform and not be authentic, self-seeking behavior. Selfish is me thinking about myself all the time, right? Fancy to real is a perfect example of selfishness. I'm in that grocery store and that woman's rude to me and I'm thinking it's all about me. I'm not thinking about her. I'm not thinking about the possibility that her mom died yesterday. I'm not thinking about I'm only thinking about the way she's treating me and how dare her. That's selfish. That is selfish behavior and I have to recognize that. Like, am I constantly thinking about others? Is her day better because I'm in it? So selfish is different than self-seeking. Does that help?
Yes. I think that question gets asked a lot. So thank you for clarifying that. My next question, unless anybody has a question.
You're full of questions.
I always am. So what would you say, I'm sure in your time of sponsoring women, you've had women come to you that just say, well, I just don't have that many resentments. I mean, have you had that happen? And then what would you say? I mean, is there like a general rule that you use of like how many resentments should be written down? I mean, I've heard both ends on this, so I would just like to hear your experience around it.
When I'm doing a fifth step, I always, for women especially, I always look at the mom, the sister, and the ex. Always you're going to have a resentment with one of those three people. I don't care who you are. If you've been on the planet for longer than 10 years, there's a sister, there's a mom, and there's an ex. And so I'll go, really? You have no ex in the entire world that wronged you, that you're resentful. Your mom has been like the best mother, the mother of all mothers. You have no resentment against anything in your childhood. Your sister has been the model of a best friend. She's never taken advantage of you or judged you, or you've never fought with her. And so that's what I do. I look at those three and they'll go, yeah, okay, get back with you. And literally, pen to paper, it spills out. That's how I address it. Don't you guys have that? Like, there's always an ex, right?
Lisa, my name's Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. Oh, I know it.
How far back in the years do you do your resentments? Because I'm quite older. Then, sometimes you'll think, well, I'm not really mad at them anymore. But if you really started digging, yes, they wronged me. But do I go that far back, like all the way back to my 20s?
No.
And
So what usually happens on a fifth step is that you'll start to see these patterns of behavior, the selfishness, the dishonesty, the resentment, the fear. You'll see them and you'll go, oh, and you have that in every relationship. It only takes 3 or 4 relationships or people for you to start to see the patterns of behavior, and you won't have to go through them all. I would put as many as you can down. You want to be thorough. But what happens is literally, you guys, in the middle of the resentment, the woman I'm sponsoring will try to take her 4th step back from me because she's so embarrassed, because she's starting to see all these things. And she's like, oh, I was an asshole. Oh my gosh, let me have that. I don't want you to see the rest of that. I'm too embarrassed. Do you see? So put as many of them as you think you are really resentful about, but you'll start to see the patterns of behavior. And that's really the point. And then once the patterns of behavior are revealed and the defects are really laid out, we don't have to go through every resentment. I don't. I'm like, do you really want to talk about your sister? You really want to talk about that boss you had? They're like, no, I see it. There you go.
Those are all the questions that I have. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, well, thank you so much, Lisa. I hope this was helpful to everyone and we all learned something today. I know that I did. Lisa will be back. We're doing this bi-weekly, so she'll be back and we'll do fears. So start thinking now of if you have anything that you want to ask in regards to fear. And thank you very much, Lisa. This was very great. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, you guys.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services that we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channel by searching for the Magdalen House.